Welcome friends to today's session of live lectures. For today's session we have with us in our studio Dr. Namita Rajput. Dr. Rajput is principal in Sri Aurobindo College, Evening, Delhi University. She has been associated with teaching work for a long time. Friends, the topic of discussion for today is ethical policies, corporate social responsibility and business success. Let's welcome Dr. Rajput and let's begin with today's topic. We welcome you, Dr. Rajput, and please give us some insight into this topic.
Good morning, friends. Today the topic which I am going to take is CSR ethical policies and practices. An encompassing notion about the CSR, that is the social responsibility, refers to both the way the company conducts its internal operations, including the way it treats its workforce and its impact on the world around it. Most socially responsible business and investment leaders endeavor to further the following agenda of the ethical policies and practices, reducing to the greatest degree possible the damage a company causes to the environment. Now, taking it forward, contributing in every conceivable way to the environment preservation through resource conservation, energy efficiency and environmentally conscious purchases and the product design through probably auditing its environmental performance. Not going business in repressive regimes, not lobbying for the sale of weaponry to unstable regimes, otherwise converting to peacetime industries to the greatest degree possible. Now, aggressively hiring and promoting women and minorities, including to the company's upper management positions, providing employees with a safe, healthy environment. Now, basically, when you talk about the corporate social responsibilities which are influenced by the ethical practices and the culture of ethics around it, so you have to be very particular about what kind of environment you give it to the employees. It should be healthy work environment, taking their safety into consideration, the cleanliness, etc. Because all these things, they have a great impact on the productivity of the employees. Now, helping the employees, taking care of their children, dependent elderly family members through such arrangements as dependent care assistance and the flexible time schedules, protecting employees from the sexual harassment. Nowadays, we are very particular in this global world of today that no gender insensitivity is allowed. So, for this matter, every organization is having a very important committee called Sexual Harassment Committee at the workplace. So, being on the women's side, all aspects relating to gender have to be very sensitively incorporated in the policies. Like, for example, is there any case of the sexual harassment? The cases should be taken forward and the culprit should be given a lot of the penalties and the punishment, etc., so that it's an example and a landmark for those cases that people will not dare to do these sexual harassment at workplace. So these things are very important for the organization. Now, fairly compensating employees for their labor and not undermining the employees' right to organize, providing permanent jobs to the greatest degree possible, not exploiting the campaign finance and lobbying laws for the narrow corporate ends. You have to obey all the laws and the regulations affecting the company's industry, conducting international business in a non-exploitative manner and a manner consistent with the company's statewide policies as well as the practices. Now, humanly treating animals, including not testing products on them when appropriate alternative exist, allowing the employees to share a wealth they have to generate through the stock ownership, incentive pays, etc. Now, basically, the CSR ethical policy and the practices, it also includes encouraging the employees at all levels to contribute ideas and participate in critical company decision making, giving back in the form of charity or voluntary communication involvement to the community and society in which the company does the business. Now, taking care of this, the purchasing in almost most socially conscientious manner possible, including contracting with minority and the women-owned companies and applying the environmental standards to the vendor relationships. Now, designing a high quality, durable products that are safe for the consumer and make a beneficial impact on the society. Then marketing the products or the services only in a socially appropriate manners, for example, not exploiting the ethnic and the gender stereotypes. Now the list, as we find, is incomplete, and the social responsibility implies conscientious attention to every conceivable social impact of a company activities. Most items on the list run absolutely counter to conservative economist Milton Friedman of quoted line, "The business of business is business." They also run the counter as well as to protest of many corporate leaders that environmentally restrictions, family leave legislations, safety regulations, giving employees the stock in the company and a voice in decision making, etc., impair a company's ability to compete. Now, all these policies, they are so good and they have a focus to uplift the employees, to give them the best environment ever. So therefore, we have to take care a 360-degree development of the employees, incorporating all the sensitive matters which are impacting them. For example, you have to take care of their leave options, you have to give them some kind of incentives by giving them the stock options, etc. You have to give them a voice in the important decision making of the company, and also you have to give a very good environment to the employees so that they feel they are having a co-partnership rather than an employee status. You have to really empower them, you have to make them compete as far as the company is concerned. However, the chorus of protesters, they have grown less robust as managers and the company owners who first implemented the social responsible policies, practices simply as a means of principle and have reaped the rewards in the form of improved employee elegance, productivity as well as the work quality. Now, some of the practices are indeed wrong, no matter where they have taken place. Dumping the pollutants from unprotected workers to handle is one example of a practice that violates what the Thomas Donsell call the core human values. Not only this, some of the practices that are unethical in one part of the world might be ethical in another. What many Americans feel about the bribery may not apply in Japan, keeping in view the long-standing tradition of gift giving. What may seem inhuman wage rates to the citizens of the developed countries may be acceptable in the developing countries that are trying to attract the investment and improve the standards of living. Why? There is a lot of difference between the conditions which are prevailing in the developed countries as well as in the underdeveloped countries. The underdeveloped countries, for them, the standards could be lower if you compare it and talk in the relative terms as far as the developed countries are concerned. So they give a lot of importance to the wages as far as the underdeveloped countries or developing countries are concerned. So definitely the things which are little less in the developed countries are acceptable in the developing countries, because this is the one way of trying to attract the investment and improve the standard of living of the people. Now coming on to the Levi Strauss and Motorola, they have helped the managers by treating the company values as absolutes and insisting that the suppliers and the customers, they do the same. Now we are coming on to a very pertinent topic of today, the CSR and the business success. The burgeoning social responsibility investment field has also maintained that the good company behavior makes for a good business. That is, the best evidence to support their calm has been steady performance of the social responsible mutual funds and the stock portfolios in the US market. The companies that wish to equip themselves for the long-term success must consider both the human as well as the environment consequences of every decision making, because we have to have one major responsibility, that is to conserve and save the environment. So you have to see that whatever activity you do as far as the business is concerned, it should not be jeopardizing the environmental, or it should not have the consequences which are bad for the environment. The drivers which propel the CSR policies in a company are greater awareness on the part of the stockholders, pressures, investor pressures, peer pressures, and an increased sense of social responsibility with increased pressure from the world forces such as globalization, liberalization, etc. Now, the conventional management wisdom tells us that the company's ultimate success results from such attitude like the creation of the products and services that are wanted and needed in the marketplace. The employees who are skilled, knowledgeable, particularly with the demands of today's global high technology economy, who are loyal because the high work force turnover is both a dispute and exceptionally costly, and who at the minimum do not undermine the company's goals with below par workmanship and the customer services. The management team that understands how to inspire both the workforce to perform competently and the customers to purchase the company's output. The executives, they know that the companies that rise above the competition often distinguishes themselves in the other ways. Their employees are unusually productive and efficient, caring for the company as if they care it for their own. The employees at all levels, they contribute creatively to the business, offering the practical, innovative, money-making or money-saving ideas. The management is uncommonly sensitive and responsive to the changes in today's almost continuously transforming the marketplace. The customers actually, they have a delight in buying the company's products, the services, and to talk them on the other potential customers. The CSR and approach to economic development is definitely a very important thing to be discussed. Almost all discussions of the corporate social responsibility as a part of the business ethics, they fit the general models operating against a backdrop of neoclassical economies. The business managers have a responsibility to minimize the profits, and as such, by doing this business, it contributes to an efficient allocation of resources and an optimal satisfaction of the consumer demand. Within the neoclassical model, healthy economy is growing and the business is the engine that powers this growth. However, the variety of environmental issues, they pose the profound challenges to the assumption of economic growth that lies at the heart of neoclassical economics. Not only this, some of the thinkers argue that environmental issues should operate not simply as a side constraints upon the economic activity of the business, but must be used to redefine the very nature of economic activity. Now, to understand this claim, we have to consider several economic, population-related and ecological facts. First, the 25% of the world population that live in the industrialized countries, mostly the North America, Europe and Japan, they consume 80% of the world goods, and producing these goods has already put a significant strain on the natural world, ranging from ozone depletion, global warming to air, water and soil pollution, to the loss of such resources as the forest, wetlands, topsoils, to extinction of the countless species of the plants and the animals. So that means we are not here to take care of the profits. We are the custodians of the environmental protection also. So whatever we do, we have to do a deep environmental analysis so that we are not depleting any of the natural resources. Because of our activities, there should not be any kind of a extinction of the countless species of plants and animals. So there has to be a caution, and the caution should be primarily on the top of your mind before you take any kind of a decision making. Now, the Worldwide Fund for the Nature, according to the research commissioned, has projected that by 2020, the Earth would be an average 2 degrees Celsius, that is 3.6 Fahrenheit, than it was in 1750. The remaining 75% of the world population live not only in the relative poverty, but many live in absolute poverty for many people. Literally, the hundreds of the millions of the human beings, they live in barely minimum levels of subsistence. The majority of the world population lacks the nutritional, medical, housing resources that the industrialized world takes as given. In the light of this tremendous inequality, the human beings, they face overwhelming humanitarian concerns. If not the basic question of the justice, economic growth is widely seen as an answer to this inequality and the misery. It is believed that so-called undeveloped economies can follow the same path as the developed economies, and they grow themselves out of the poverty. As the undeveloped economies grow, they will provide the jobs and the incomes to their citizens. So this is a major thing, that when you talk about the undeveloped economies, and as and when they grow, they will provide the jobs and the incomes to their citizens. This income is supposed to be satisfy the needs of the population and create more demands, more growth and more income. Of course, the developed economies in the north and almost they grow to provide the markets and the investments for the south. Thus, the worldwide economic growth is basically a means for achieving a more decent and a just world. The business serves this ideal simply by fulfilling the responsibilities established for the neoclassical economics. And if we try to estimate the type of the growth that would be necessary to achieve these goals, then this would claim 5-fold increase in energy use and many-folds increase in economic activity for the next 50 years. Now consider what this increase would mean. Such issues as carbon dioxide emissions, extractions of fossil and fuels and minerals, rainwater destruction, fish harvest, pesticides, fertilizer use, diversion of water from lakes, rivers and aquifers. Now basically when you talk about the generation of the nuclear waste in the plants and the animal extinction, most importantly we need to acknowledge that there are biophysical limits to such growth. The implication of this is that the business cannot continue to operate in ways that ignore this biophysica. And there are limits to growth. Clearly, substantial economic activity will require to meet the basic needs of the world growing population. Now, this is best understood through a contract between economic growth, economic development. Growth is the quantitative increase in the economic physical scales, whereas the development refers to a qualitative improvement in the economy. Thus, sustainable development ought to be the goal of the world economy and primarily ethical standards for the business activity. Sustainable growth, on the other hand, is an oxymoron. The companies are expected to live up to their social responsibilities by adhering to the international agreed standards. Not only this, this implies that the corporations, they develop the specific policies for adopting, implementing, promoting international treaties and the guidelines. Now, while guaranteeing these policies are put into practice in every aspect of their operations. So basically, as a matter of fact, the corporate, they have to take care of the international protocols, the treaties, and they have to promote an environment wherein the CSR international standards are adhered. Social responsibility also implies the corporations should be accountable for their actions. By making themselves accountable, corporation honors the public right to be informed of the ethical, social, environmental effects of the corporation operations, products and services. Now, what are international CSR standards? As a result, the public will be able to make an informed assessment of the company's CSR policies. There are discussed as under first, the human rights. The corporations, they have the obligations to observe, respect and promote the human rights. This responsibility is set out in a preamble to Universal Declaration of the Human Rights, that is UDHR, which was adopted on 10th of December 1948. It is based on the notion that recognition of the inherently dignity and of the equal, undeniable rights to all the members of the global community of the people constitutes the basics of the freedom, justice and peace across the world. The preamble of UDHR calls on every organ of the society to guarantee by progressive measures that the human rights to are recognized and basically to complied with. Now, when you talk about the CSR international standards, the corporations as the organs of the society are under the obligation to comply with the international accepted human rights and to promote the respect for these rights and the freedoms, their respective spheres of activities and influence. The second is the labor. The International Labour Organization, that is the ILO, a tripartite UN organization founded in 1919 and representing the government, business and the workers, has set up the policy framework for the labor issues. The conventions issued by the ILO on the working conditions, they specify the 4 fundamental labor rights, which are freedom of association, the right to collective bargaining, a ban on the forced labor, a ban on the child labor, and a ban on discrimination in the workplace in professions. The ILO's convention focus, in particular, the government responsibilities with respect to the labor rights. The tripartite declaration of the principle concerning the multinational enterprises and the social policy extends the ILO conventions, the listing corporate responsibilities with regard to the labor issues and also the right to security of the employment. Now, the right to a living wage, the right to a safe and sound working conditions, the compliance with the maximum number of working hours, 48 plus 12, and additional labor standards falling under the specific responsibility of the corporations. The 1976 ILO Tripartite Declaration of the Principles of Concerning the Multinational Enterprises, the Social Policy, and the OECD Guidelines, they include important clauses on employment policy in general. The training, the handling of complaints, prior notice and maximum mitigation in cases where changes in operations such as the layoffs, dismissals have major effect on the livelihood of the employees, no treat for exercising the right to organize, no practice of double standards employing and training standard locally as well as possible, allowing the workers' representatives to negotiate and confer with the decision makers. Now, coming on to the core values. The core values for the social accountability, 8,000 company are: no child below 15 years of age, no forced labor who are not free to suspend the work contract, and must guarantee a secure, a healthy working environment. Not to prohibit, oppose or penalize the union activity. To select the employees on the basis of their competence and capabilities and offering the equal opportunities and conditions. You have to treat all the workers with dignity, respect, prohibit use of unacceptable physical discipline, assure the workers the economic conditions for a dignified standards of living, not to force the workers to exceed a 40-hour work per week, not to ask for more than 12 hours of overtime, nor ask the employees the habitual to work overtime. Now you have to implement a system to monitor, to verify the supplies which are fulfilling this code of conduct and provide the corrective actions in case of violations. Now coming on to the third CSR international standards. The third is respect for the environment. The modern industry has provided us with the material prosperity unequaled in our history. It has also created unparalleled environmental threats to ourselves and to generate the future generations. The very technology that has enabled us to manipulate, control the nature has also polluted our environment and has rapidly depleted our natural resources. Environmental damage inevitably threatens the welfare of the humans as a part of the plants and the animals. The threats to the environment come from two sources, pollution and resource depletion. Pollution refers to undesirable, unintended contamination of the environment by the manufacturer. The resource depletion, on the other hand, refers to the consumption of finite and the scarce the resources. In a certain sense, the pollution is really a type of the resource depletion, since the contamination of water, air or land diminishes their beneficial qualities. The business institutions, they have to be traditionally been able to ignore the environmental effect for the business reasons. The business have been able to treat the things like water, air as free goods. Pollution problems are rooted not in the business activity but also results from the use that the consumers make of the products and the human-based products. Economists often distinguish between what it cost or a private manufacturer to a product which the manufacturer of that product costs society at large, a sum total of private cost and a social cost. The business has ethical responsibility concerning the natural environment. Familiar environment issues like air, water pollution, toxic waste disposal are the traditional environmental responsibilities for the business. And there is a strong consensus that the business has direct ethical responsibilities towards the natural environment. A more controversial claim is that the business has a direct ethical responsibilities to the natural world. Now, the various angles are also to be discussed, like the analysis of the business environment can begin with the familiar categories from ethics to philosophy and from business responsibility to intentionally negotiable part. When such harms occur, the business has a responsibility to compensate individuals who are harmed by intentional or negligent acts. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Rajput. Thank you all for joining us for this session. If you have any questions regarding this session, you can mail us on our mail ID, which is info.cec@nic.in. Thank you, friends, for joining us. And if you want to know any details about our channel schedule, you can visit our FB page. And for any other information about CEC, which is CEC-UGC, please like, subscribe and share to that page. And for this lecture, you can see our YouTube channel, which all the lectures have been uploaded on our YouTube channel, which is CEC-UGC. For any other details, please visit our FB page or our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us for this session, and we thank you again, Dr. Rajput.